We do have a policy that is called the no diversity, no commission. So if our partners are not, let's say, in all the production chain, they are not diverse enough, we do not work with them.
That's
so
great.
There is no diversity and no commission.
Elena, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm fine, Chris. Thank you for having me today.
We were speaking just before we started. I know a big passion of yours is DEI, diversity and inclusion, and the company has a big commitment. You mentioned to me that your DEI team reports directly to the board, which is always a great sign, like I said. How can a DEI strategy contribute to shaping a more sustainable business? How are you looking at that as an organization?
Let's say that, luckily enough, we're starting to also have data about it. Because of course, I think that, the difficulty that sometimes HR faces when trying to invest in human beings and invest in D&I, it's like the return of the investment, right? It's complicated to demonstrate what this investment will bring to the company and why we have to spend money, resources, time in, let's say, nurturing a very diverse environment. We assume that engagement could be a good KPI, an indicator of how people feel about the company and how integrated they are in the company. We start to have data, like, for example, we have a 70% lower rate of safety incidents in the company when the engagement data is really high compared to the companies where it is not, or they have 28% increase in revenue growth compared to the companies that they are not, 21% more higher profitability than they are not. So of course, we start to see that investing in having a safe, diverse, and engaging environment is good for the business. I think this is something that we should start as HR leaders to really speak comfortably about, because it would really help our cause. Because I think that we do face that complexity in terms of demonstrating how complex it is. I think that diversity is also something that cannot be treated one fits all. To execute a strategy in different countries with different backgrounds, different culture, different languages, different maturity also in terms of diversity and inclusion. Because of course, if we look at the United States, a certain point of the path of the diversity and inclusion journey, differences, what diversity mean in those countries. For example, when you talk about Colombia, it's people who were part of the FARC, of the armed organization. They are a minority in Colombia. So of course, they're much more interested in integrating those minorities and protecting those minorities. Let's say, create an environment that is welcoming to them. Of course, it really depends on the country and the maturity of the country.
How do you practically do that? What does that look like, though, from a practical point of view? How do you practically create that environment? What are some of the specific things?
We have the ERGs, which right now they're super popular. Because of course, all the companies that have ERG, we launched ERGs so many years ago when they were not even called the ERGs, right? Yeah. And we have ERGs about, of course, genders, parenthood, different sexual orientation, and so on. And we're probably launching the male, also the male ERG group. Because of course, it's like, we're trying to focus so much on minorities sometimes that we forget the rest.
And then they feel excluded.
So we try to invite different voices at the table and to listen from them. And so the listening point to me is crucial. When you say, what do you do in practical terms? We do listen, okay? Because we assume that we don't know everything. ERGs are a space where employees can kind of group and discuss things together, and they are really connected with the top leadership. There is, let's say, they are not filtered. which is the good thing, right? So when the leadership, I mean, what
Do
sometimes
you have leadership representation in the ERGs?
yes, of course. I mean, we do have a leader representation. For example, I'm the executive sponsor for the female one. I try to be a sponsor also for the adapted, so disability ones. We do have executive sponsorship, but important thing is they are one of the main stakeholder that a company counts on when they want to know what happened. So they are really connected with the top leadership. There are no filters. Even though we are a very big company, we're trying not to, let's say, create too many layers.
Yeah.
And to have like a kind of as flat organization as possible in terms of communication.
One of the big challenges I hear from companies is, especially you mentioned about how do you do this across multiple countries and cultures? Do you tailor the communication strategy to each of those? How do you deal with that?
Since we try to listen to the local ERGs, they bring on the table the local issues, what they're really, let's say, worried about. For example, I am based in Italy. In November, there was a feminicide that was really, let's say, loud. No, it was louder than the rest. So, of course, in that specific moment, that was the topic, the hot topic. They were talking about it, and they were demanding information and investment from the company on that specific topic. So we brought in people that are having a real big impact in Italy when it comes to gender violence, et cetera, et cetera. So we try to really kind of tailor what comes from the general, let's say, mandate, the international
And then
mandate.
tailor it to each region,
Exactly.
given the nuance. Okay.
Exactly, respecting, as I said before, that diversity means a different thing in a different country.
And that takes a lot of work, right? So I want for our listeners to understand there's no easy way to do that. It takes a lot of time. It's you can't automate this. It has to be intentional. And as you said, you have the global vision, strategy, communication, but you then have to communicate that with the local language.
Yes, exactly. And I think something that, I mean, we don't speak about very often, or at least not as such, it's about mapping the stakeholders. When you create a very global strategy and you have then to kind of fine-tune the strategy and cascade the strategy at local level, you need to map your stakeholders. Also, the local governmental and non-governmental association. So you put also them in your map. You're much better prepared to translate from a cultural perspective, from let's say an important perspective, what you think it's a global strategy to something that is significant at local level.
What would you say is sort of the biggest challenge that you face doing that on a global scale?
The localization, I would say, that is one of the biggest challenge. I mean, to create something that, I mean, it's, let's say, inspirational enough and sustainable. Of course, I'm really also into sustainability because everything that we do in HR and in D&I, it's about medium and long-term result. It's an investment that is not about tomorrow. It's about the medium long term. Okay, because when you deal with human beings, of course, it's changes. You don't see changes in one day. Okay,
Yeah.
So of course, I mean, and you have to create, let's say, and you have to have the business to create a sustainability approach. I mean, that can be here for X number of years, et cetera, et cetera. Now, for your employees, you always need to think about a lot ahead of your time. Now, when you set up a strategy, that is to me the challenge. You face the kind of troubles of the moment now, but you need to have a very straightforward look in the future and say, okay, but this is what we're facing today. But what I want to really reach in 5 years' time, 3 years' time, no? And how I'm going to do it by solving the problem that I have today, but also creating the path to also reach that goal in 3-5 5 years. To me, that is also one of the biggest challenges that we're facing right now. Because of course, we are so in the middle of the fight, not in the middle of the fire to answer really operational problems and day-to-day problems, but you really need to
Also
keep
have
your...
that. How do you find that when communicating that to the leadership team who are looking for results right now?
It's about, to embed the long-term strategy with quick win. That's also the point. Is trying to really balance that by quick wins.
Yeah.
And of course, I said, likely enough, we're starting to have data that support our, let's say, our speech for HR people, for people that are, let's say, I wouldn't say just HR, let's say people that people leaders that, of course, in investing, investing on those areas, let's say, as a financial and economical impact. So it's beneficial for the company and beneficial for the business.
Yeah.
But of course, you need quick wins.
Of course. No, I think it's important for everyone to hear that. You mentioned the data piece. Do you, where are you storing that, or do you have a sort of people analytics software that you're using? How are you aggregating all of that data and drawing those insights?
We use the SAP environment. So of course we're using SuccessFactors and also the plugin, the several plugins and Chris, the biggest problem is that most of the more interesting data are private. So that's also the point. Personally, that in HR we do face a complexity because the data are not generally, historically, I would say, as a function, we don't have such a clear and clean data.
That's why I asked you the question. That's exactly why I asked the question, because that's a challenge that most companies face and still face to this day.
The origin of it is that the data are not clear and clean enough to start with. Most of the more interesting data are private. So these are, I would say, the two complexity that we face when it comes to a bit more sophisticated approach and more, let's say, data-centered approach to HR. These are the two complexities that I would say. And I think this is really general because historically, HR doesn't have a good database, historically speaking.
Yeah. Well, I think we've made huge strides, though, right, in the last couple of years. And we continue to do that now. Like now I'm seeing people, sort of DEI analytics companies pop up, right, that didn't even exist before. So we have specific data sets that we can draw around DEI, and which obviously connects into all of the other systems. So it's going to be really exciting over the next sort of 3 to 5 years how that's going to evolve as we become more data driven and have that sort of historical data that we can see the progress.
The challenge is also to create an environment that is safe enough for the employee to voluntarily and willingly provide you some data. I think that's also the challenge, right?
Exactly. You're going to have to create that psychological safety for people to feel that they can do that. And it's not going to be used against them. I think that's always the fear. Like, how is this going to be used? And is it going to be used against me in a negative way that's going to impact my career? Or, so yeah, it's about building that trust along the way, which you can lose very easy. It's hard to gain, but you can lose it very fast.
It's hard to gain. It takes a long journey to earn it. And then 1 second of how to lose it.
What are some of the other projects that you have from a DEI perspective that you're excited about?
We're going to focus very much on different abilities. This would be how to embed also the D&I strategy into, let's say, a more global ESG one. Because of course, they're really interconnected.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on that? Because all of a sudden, out of nowhere, like in the last couple of years, you've got DEI and ESG sort of the coming closer together. What are your thoughts on that? Because it's something very relatively new, right?
The sustainability journey really depends on the company and also the sector the company is in.
Yeah.
Of course, when you're talking about industrial companies, of course, the biggest effort probably is in the E.
Yeah.
And they are the one who are really facing right now the change in regulation, especially in the EU. For that sector, there is a kind of mandatory change in strategy, plus, of course, the focus on the E. For us, we do produce intellectual property.
Mhm.
So, it's we're a service company. So, of course, it's let's say for us, the focus, it's much more about our responsibility on how we kind of represent reality. Because, of course, when we create content, we create, we also create what is normality.
Yeah.
What's normal and what is not.
Mhm.
So, of course, we take that responsibility very serious.
Yeah.
And as the company is investing in a lot of projects, I would say, not only producing content, and there is this initiative called Content for Change, where we kind of represent stories about minorities or communities that are usually less represented, not? But also we're trying to understand that from the source, what is the best way to represent them, okay? We don't assume that we know. That's, and that's also what I was talking to you about when I told you about listening. This is what we do. We try to listen and to learn. We don't assume that we know.
That's why we
No,
make mistakes. Yeah.
I think this is something that the company is really proud of and making a lot of effort in trying to understand through research what is the best way to represent it. And then we put a lot of effort in making sure that behind the camera, the screenwriter, the camera, men, women, everyone that works in production, et cetera, et cetera. So at every stage of the production, there is a diverse team that is working.
Diverse perspectives and thoughts, right? Like making sure that you want to make sure that your employees and your community and obviously your content reflects each other.
The audience can really see themselves represented in a significant and realistic way. That's also the point, not? Because if not, we tend to kind of stereotype, which is the worst thing that you can do.
Does that also carry over to your partners? Is that something you've looked at in terms of your suppliers, your partners?
Exactly. We do have a policy that is called no diversity, no commission. So if our partners are not, let's say, in all the production chain, they are not diverse enough, we do not work with them.
That's
so
great.
There is no diversity and no commission policy.
I love that. Again, it's got to flow through everything, right? Looking at all policies and processes through that diverse lens and making sure that it permeates through everything, right? All the way all the way through. That's where you're going to have real impact. You can say all the things we've spoken about, but if you don't make those changes, you're not going to have sustainable impact, to your point.
Exactly, but it's the same. When you talk about the life cycle of an employee inside the company, it's the same. In every decision that you make, it's not just about, let's fix the gender pay gap, and so you face yourself with the fact that, you don't have women in position of power. So even though if you want to fix the gender pay gap, it's basically impossible and unethical to do so. So you have to really make sure that in every step and every decision that you take, from the moment that you hire someone, the moment that you develop them, or the succession pipeline, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, in every moment that you're taking care of it. So you then can put yourself in the condition to fix some things, right? But if all your senior VPs are men from a certain race, from a certain let's say socioeconomical class, of course, and that their pipeline of a successor, they're all the same, it will be really difficult to then have a kind of a diverse good or diverse executive committee, et cetera, et cetera. No? So that's also why we're so proud to say, hey, in our board, 7 of 11 members are women. So, I mean, it starts from the top, right? But it also starts from the fact that in every step that we take, we are really intentionally inclusive.
Yeah, you have to be. Exactly. It's not going to just happen. You have to be intentional about everything and put the right systems, processes, policies for every part of the customer journey, the employee journey, all of those touch points, the moments that matter have to be reflected
Okay.
there. Listen, before I let you go, Elena, what would be your, firstly, thank you so much for the great conversation. I'm really happy we finally managed to connect. What would be your parting advice to organizations that are looking to go on a similar journey to yourselves, really moving the DEI needle and becoming more sustainable? What advice would you give them? And then where can people connect with you personally if they want to reach out and say hi to you?
Look, I would say that not be afraid of being wrong. So in terms of really trying to listen, not to answer, but to learn. That's the point. Not be defensive about it. No, it's about this is a learning journey. I mean, from diversity, you always have to put yourself in, let's say, in the learning mode, the curiosity mode, and try not to be defensive about it.
No, love it. And where can people find you? LinkedIn, probably the best.
LinkedIn is the best way to get
Yeah,
in contact.
amazing. Well, listen, I appreciate you coming on the show. I know this is just a beginning for you and the team. As you said, it's a journey, right? And it will continuously evolve as well. But I appreciate you taking the time to share your journey and experience, and I look forward to doing this again soon in the future. Thanks so much.
Thank you for inviting me here, Chris. It's been a pleasure.